when Ireland joined the EU in 1973, the first thing the government did was to look for derogation on equal pay. So it's hardly surprising that we have made so little progress in that regard. The morning after our public meeting, the Institute of Public Administration held a major conference on national recovery and the role of public service in Dublin, and speaking at that meeting were figures like the Taoiseach Brian Cowan and Colin McCarthy, who's the author of the far-reaching report on cuts to public service and public expenditure, which are going to impact so heavily on all of us in the coming months. And women, as you probably know, are the major providers of public services. They're also the major users of public services in this country. They will also be disproportionately hit by cuts to the public service. So how many women do you think there were on the platform taking part in this conference? The correct answer is not one single one. There were 8 men on that platform and there wasn't a single woman. This is very much in keeping with the sort of representation of women in decision making that we're seeing at the moment. 5 out of 6 of the McCarthy team were men. Only 1 of the 16 people on the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Finance and Public Services is a woman. There were only 5 women on the Commission of Taxation, and so it goes on. There are only 13% of our representatives in the Dáil and the Senate are women, and it's great to see 2 women MEPs here today. The Commissioner referred to the fact that if we don't take positive action on the pay gap, it'll take 70 years for it for women to reach equality with men. We've estimated in the Women's Council that if we don't do something about the representation of women in Parliament in Ireland, it will take 370 years. And we're just not willing to wait that long. Both of the previous speakers have spoken about the shocking report, ESRI report, that has just come out showing the gender pay gap. It's very striking that in the past few weeks we've had the results of both the Leaving Cert exams and the Junior Cert exams in this country, and girls have outperformed boys right across the board. And yet, when those girls go on into further education and go on into the workforce, within a couple of years they are going to be earning significantly less than the same boys that they outperformed at school. So we really do have to deal with this. It is a gross injustice against the women of this country. And the ESRI report is very useful because it does actually propose positive actions that can be taken to deal with this. It suggests, for example, the use of career breaks, which can be available to men as well as to women, because at the moment, as has been said by previous speakers, most of the unpaid caring work in Ireland is being done by women, and we're going to be launching some new research on that very soon. But as Renee has mentioned, when you take away the differential to do with other elements, you are left with about 10%, which just has to come down to good old discrimination. Men over 55 with a certain world outlook dealing with women. We have been very concerned in the Women's Council in recent weeks and months by calls that we're getting from women and from our member organisations about the ways in which recession in particular is affecting women. We're hearing about things like, Renee spoke about the unemployment figures. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you're very well aware, Renee, women are not always represented in the unemployment figures, because what we're seeing happening at the moment is a lot of women, particularly in the retail sector, which has been very hard hit by recession, instead of laying women off, what employers are doing is they're putting them on shorter hours. They're making them work, say, for the busiest hours of the day rather than for the whole day. And that means that you're earning less pay, but you're not able to sign on for those days. So you're not actually able to access your welfare benefits. A lot of women are working in low-paid jobs, and they're also working in part-time work because of childcare commitments largely. So they're not featuring even on the figures in relation to redundancy and unemployment. Renee also mentioned the marriage bar back in the 70s, and of course the discrimination in pay also affects women's pension entitlements. And one of the groups of women that we're working with at the moment in the Women's Council are older women who were victims of the marriage bar, who were thrown out of the workforce when they got married back in the 70s and 60s, who are now finding that they have no pension eligibility. So the discrimination which they experienced at that time is coming back to bite them again, which is clearly something that needs to be addressed, but unfortunately in the current climate is extremely unlikely to be addressed. It doesn't mean that we can't keep asking about it. The European Commission did issue guidelines to governments when this recession became apparent that recession was hitting Europe. They urged the governments to take note of the differential between the way that recession would hit women and the way it would hit men. Unfortunately, our government is not taking that into account. There was reference to the National Women's Strategy, which is being supported by the Equality Authority, which is great, but there's going to be a lot of work to do to salvage the National Women's Strategy. It was only launched in 2007, and already we're seeing major parts of the budget for it taken away and used to cover for other deficits in the budget. For example, there was 10 million this year that was supposed to be spent on equality for women measures. What has happened is that most of that has been taken to pay for Garda overtime because the Department of Justice didn't have the money to pay for that. So our budget has been ransacked to provide for other pressing needs, and we're not saying that they aren't pressing needs, but when you see the sort of figures that are coming out about women in the workforce, you realise that equality is going to have to be struggled for no matter what the other needs. It's not a luxury. When the money was taken away from the Equality for Women measure, a small amount was left, and that was parcelled up and given out to a small number of women's groups. These groups have been encouraged to apply for very large sums of money to do major projects. When they were given the small portion of that budget, they were told that they were to proceed with their projects, but there were certain stipulations, and these included there was to be no money spent on childcare, there was to be no money spent on transport, and there was to be no money spent on tea. Now, can anybody here who has ever worked with women in any part of this country tell us how you run any project for women that has neither childcare, transport nor tea? It is, it is certainly impossible on any one of those grounds. So we are at the moment the Women's Council is we've just launched our campaign No Going Back, but we've also launched another campaign within that which is called Spot the Woman. And I would urge everybody here to participate in this, and it is, what you do is you look at any body which is being set up, or any panel which is being set up, or any influential group of people which are appearing with microphones in their hands, and you count the women, and if there are less than 40% of women on that platform, you demand to know why, and you inform the National Women's Council of what the response was. Because really it is absolutely ludicrous. Just this morning I got an invitation to be part of a platform on progressive economics, in which there was only one woman speaker. I was not the one woman speaker. I'm being asked just to sum up the proceedings of the day. But one woman speaker and 8 men on progressive economics. So I urge everybody here to help us in this campaign, because really we've got to catch up with the rest of Europe, and we will be looking to Europe to support us, because there are some excellent campaigns in Europe on trying to get equal representation of women. And I hope that we'll be able to...
We can make it a European campaign.
Yes,
Spot the woman.
Yeah, let's do that.
Spot the woman.
Thank you very much.